Did you know some people are still radiant with joy at 92, even after losing the love of their life at 51? Sounds impossible, doesn't it? But the truth is, they're not clinging to youth. They're not chasing thrills or pretending to be someone else. Sometimes, just watching a single autumn leaf drift to the ground is enough to make them feel deeply alive. If you've ever woken up, looked in the mirror, and quietly wondered, am I really living or just getting through the day? Then this story is for you. Stay with me, because by the end, you'll hear a single sentence from a 92-year-old woman that changed one man's life in a single afternoon. Clara sat there, her eyes gazing out the window, where golden leaves were gently falling onto the gray brick sidewalk. She didn't speak right away, as if letting memories pass through her once more. Then she turned to Paulo, her voice steady and slow, like recounting an old story whose sharp edges had long been softened by time. I got married when I was 24, Clara began. His name was Samuel, a gentleman, quiet, with the calmest eyes. We truly loved each other. It wasn't loud or dramatic, but it was deep. She paused. He passed away when I was 51. Liver cancer. Less than 6 months from diagnosis to the end. Paulo bowed his head. He didn't know what to say, and he understood there was no need to say anything. After the funeral, Clara continued, I returned to the house we had shared. Everything was still in its place. His jacket on the hook behind the bathroom door, the book he was halfway through, the chair where he'd read the paper every morning. Everything was so familiar, it took my breath away. Her words were slow but sure. For the next 2 years, I was like a hollow shell. I didn't wake up because I wanted to, but because my body clock pulled me out of sleep. I didn't eat because I was hungry, but because the dizziness wouldn't go away. I didn't speak to anyone, except for a few obligatory exchanges. I didn't cry, but I didn't smile either. Paulo stayed silent, his chest tightening. He could see it now. Even Clara's gentle face bore the imprint of a loss that once cut deep. Then, one morning, I was sitting on the porch, holding a cup of tea I wasn't drinking. The wind blew gently. A single leaf fell in front of me. It was orange-yellow, slightly curled, oddly beautiful. I don't know why, but I just kept staring at it. And I thought, it's aging, but it's not resisting that. It's growing old naturally, beautifully. No one expects it to turn green again. Clara smiled, her eyes glowing with a quiet intensity. And I realized, I'm aging too, but I've been dying, not from age, but because I've refused to live. I couldn't let the next 40 years of my life exist only inside memories, she said, her voice firm like a vow whispered only to herself. From that day, Clara began to change, little by little. She didn't chase after any grand makeover. She simply began with small things. Each morning she set the breakfast table outside, eating with the sky and the birds. She joined a senior yoga class at the local community center, where she moved, stretched, and made new friends. At 60, she learned the piano, not to perform, but to feel what it was like for her fingers to make music. At 65, she started taking evening walks in the park. At 70, she taught herself how to bake wood-fired bread, just to relive the warm scent of her childhood. Clara wasn't trying to become anyone. She simply decided each day she would live a little more intentionally than the day before. Not fast, not perfectly, but fully present. Paulo sat silently, his chest trembling ever so slightly. He thought of himself, the mornings he scrolled through his phone instead of looking at the sky, the years he lived only to work and to get through the day. And he wondered, Am I also living in the past? And if I have 40 more years ahead of me, what will I do with them? That day, after chatting for a while at the cafe, Clara invited Paulo for a walk in the nearby park. She didn't use a cane, but walked slowly, light and steady, as if every step had its own purpose. The October afternoon was cool, the sky a clear blue, and the oak trees were in the middle of shedding their leaves. The wind rustled through the branches like it was whispering something ancient, something true. Paulo asked her, "Were you ever afraid of getting old?" Clara smiled gently but didn't answer right away. They walked a little further until she paused in front of a large oak tree, its trunk thick and moss-covered on one side. "People teach women to stay slim and men to stay sharp," she said, her eyes fixed on the branches, slowly bearing with the season. "But no one teaches us how to keep our dignity as we age." Paulo followed her gaze. The oak tree was no longer lush like the younger ones nearby. Its bark was cracked, rough, some branches were dry, yet it stood tall, grounded, a witness to time. It didn't need to be vibrant. It didn't need to prove anything. "Do you see that oak?" Clara asked, her voice gentle but resolute. "It doesn't need to be green like in spring. It's beautiful in its aging." Paulo was silent. Her words stirred something in him. For years he had tried, jogging, dieting, dyeing his hair, using anti-aging products, buying a new car, dressing younger than his age. None of it wrong, but now he wondered, was it for health, or was it because he was afraid to accept himself? Clara shared that she had once been like that too. She used to spend hours in front of the mirror trying to conceal crow's feet. She'd use expensive creams, wear bright dresses that didn't feel like her, curl her hair to look lively. But one day, looking in the mirror, she no longer saw herself, only a version trying to live like someone else. "I learned to let my hair go silver," she said. "I wear makeup less, only when I want to, not because I have to. I stopped wearing things that made me feel like a stranger to myself." At that moment, Paulo looked at her and saw no signs of neglect. What he saw was a rare, authentic beauty. Silver hair, yet bright eyes. An old coat, yet a calm and graceful posture. Not beauty meant to impress, but beauty that invited closeness. "I don't fight aging. I cooperate with it. I've made peace with it." Paulo exhaled. He had never thought of aging as a friend. To him, it had always been an enemy, a sign of the end. But now, standing under that oak, he began to understand. Maybe aging isn't about losing. Maybe it's about returning to simplicity, to what matters, to yourself. No need to display, no need to race, just presence, like that oak tree, still standing, silent, steady, and full of worth, even if no one calls its name. On the walk back to the cafe, Clara and Paulo passed through a quiet little neighborhood where modest wooden houses were surrounded by flower gardens and the cheerful barking of dogs. Clara slowed down in front of a small white-painted gate and paused, looking inside. In the yard, a young woman was crouched down cutting herbs, with a fluffy dog wagging its tail excitedly beside her. "That's my granddaughter," she said, her eyes warm. "Her name is Rose. Every Thursday afternoon, I come sit with her for an hour. We don't do anything, just sit, but I always go home feeling lighter." Paulo looked at the scene, then turned to Clara, his eyes asking the question he hadn't spoken out loud. She understood and continued. "I don't have many friends," she said slowly, "but I hold on to the ones who make me want to smile." She told him about an old friend from her university days named Margaret.
They once shared everything: books, letters, dreams, even heartbreaks. But over time, Margaret changed. After 50, she often compared her life to others, spoke bitterly, always believing someone else had it better. Their get-togethers stopped being relaxing. They became quiet competitions: who had aged better, whose children were more successful, who got more attention from family. One afternoon, after seeing her, I felt exhausted, not from walking, but from being emotionally drained. And I realized I don't have to keep someone in my life just because the past was beautiful. So she quietly stepped away. No fights, no blame. She just stopped calling, stopped sharing, and let that friendship drift away like a boat without wind.
I choose to stay close to those who calm my heart, Clara said. An elderly neighbor who loves dogs and tells silly stories. A little child who scribbles in chalk outside my gate. A granddaughter who never rushes anything. Paolo listened, then thought about his own life. Old friends whose every conversation revolved around achievements. Dinners where everyone spoke louder just to be heard. And he began to understand why he always felt so drained afterward. Clara shared that every morning, after brewing tea, she opened a small notebook and wrote a single line. Just one line. Today, I'm thankful for. Sometimes it was for the sunshine. Sometimes for Rose making coffee for me. Sometimes because I feel better than yesterday. She said it wasn't a ritual. It was her way of turning her heart toward the light. Paolo suddenly felt the truth in Clara's words. Positive energy doesn't come from luxury, not from expensive dinners or glamorous vacations. It comes from people who make you want to be gentle. People who make you speak softer, breathe slower, and smile without effort. And he realized it was time to choose again. Not to choose friends for fun, but to choose people who bring peace to your soul. The next morning, Paolo met Clara again at the park. She wore her soft brown sweater, canvas shoes, and carried a light scarf and a glass water bottle. They walked along the gravel path lined with blooming wildflowers and clusters of sparrows perched on power lines in the distance. Clara walked slowly, but steadily. Each step felt like a gentle greeting to her body. When they reached a wooden bench under a large tree, she stopped, lifted her head, took in a deep breath, and stretched, as if welcoming the new day with her full presence. She unscrewed her bottle and drank warm water in slow, mindful sips, as if listening to each drop move through her body. Paolo watched, then asked, "Do you follow any special workout routine? Do you follow a strict diet to stay healthy?" Clara smiled and shook her head. "I don't diet harshly. I don't jog 5 kilometers every morning. But I do small things my body enjoys. I stretch each morning to get my blood flowing. I drink warm water to wake my stomach. And I walk just to admire the flowers, not to burn calories." She sat on the bench and gently massaged her knees, like comforting an old friend who had walked with her for years. She said, "I don't make my body obey me. I ask it what it needs." If she woke up with back pain, she paused, didn't force a workout. If she felt thirsty, she drank slowly, not in gulps, to hydrate. If she felt sleepy after lunch, she lay down for a 15-minute nap instead of grabbing coffee to power through. Paolo looked surprised. "But don't you feel like you're getting weaker?" he asked. Clara looked at him, her gaze soft but profound. She said, "Yes, I'm getting weaker, but I'm weakening gently. I don't fight it." Paolo sat still, as if he had just heard something deeply true. Since turning 60, he had felt his agility fading. He fought back with strict workout schedules, supplements, pushing himself to race against aging. But he had never thought of befriending his body.
Clara pointed out, when you treat your body like a servant, it resists. But when you treat it like an old friend, with listening, respect, and care, it softens and walks you through aging more peacefully. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just needs to be a companion.
That afternoon, Clara invited Paulo to her home, a small wooden house quietly tucked behind a hibiscus fence with a faint scent of lavender in the air. Inside, everything was simple, yet neatly arranged and warmly inviting. On an old wooden table, a small candle flickered. Its gentle amber glow made the room feel slower. Soft piano music played from an old radio. Clara turned off the stove, poured tea into 2 plain ceramic cups, then sat down, cupped her hands around the mug, and closed her eyes for a few seconds. "This is my ritual," she said, softly opening her eyes. "Not to pray for anything, but to remind myself I'm still alive, and to live it fully." Paulo said nothing. He simply watched her, sensing a kind of peace in her that he hadn't felt in anyone for a long time. There were no sermons, no scriptures, just a cup of hot tea and full presence. Clara shared that she didn't follow any particular religion. She had attended church in her youth, tried meditation during a wellness retreat, read the Bible, and listened to various spiritual teachers. But eventually she discovered what lightened her soul most were the quiet rituals she created for herself. "Every day I light a candle," she said, "not because I believe it holds power, but because I want a moment of stillness, gentle light, and a comforting scent. I listen to instrumental music so my mind isn't pulled into words, and I sit, not in deep meditation, just to listen, to my breath." She stood up and retrieved a framed watercolor from the corner of the room. Grass, a patch of blue sky, a few strokes like wind. "I painted this when I was 84, she said. "No real technique, but every time I look at it, I feel like I'm touching something sacred." Paulo looked at the painting. What silenced him wasn't its beauty, but its honesty. No pretense, no effort. Just a moment held in deep attention. Clara added quietly, "I don't need anyone's approval. I just need to touch life every day." Paulo understood. Perhaps the sacred isn't found in grand cathedrals or towering monuments. It lives in the way we wrap our hands around a warm cup of tea, in the way we listen to music without doing anything else, in the way we gaze at a single branch at sunset. If there is something holy in this world, it is the gratitude we hold for every breath we're still allowed to take. Paulo stepped out of the cafe just as the sun slipped behind the rooftops. For the first time in years, he wasn't trying to prove anything. He didn't need a goal or a plan or to feel productive. He just walked, breathed, existed, fully present, like that quiet oak tree in the park. And if you, watching this video, have ever feared aging like a storm on the horizon, I invite you to find your own Clara. Not someone else necessarily, but the quiet, wise part of yourself that may be waiting patiently just to be noticed. Because if you've been living just to get through each day, maybe it's time to pause and finally start touching life again. And if this story brought you even a small moment of peace, please share it. Because somewhere out there, a 60-year-old man might be sitting alone in the late afternoon, and he needs to hear exactly this.